I'm very confident about South Africa's future because I think its democratic foundations are very strong. And the African National Congress of Nelson Mandela has been taken over by others, and they don't meet his standards. They don't always come anywhere near sticking to his values, but they're very difficult and high standards to meet, and his shoes are very, very big shoes to fill, and I doubt anybody could have filled them. So I don't think you should compare South Africa today with some kind of idealized, romanticized Nelson Mandela miracle standards. You should compare it with what is if you like, the reality of day-to-day government and all the problems and all the constraints. And there are big pluses. Millions of people have had electricity and running water brought to where they live. Millions of houses have been built. When I go there, which is not as often as I would like, there is a joy still in the country, which is, for me, is very moving compared with the horror of apartheid. But there's still big problems, huge problems, and that's basically, without acquitting in any sense the politicians of today from their responsibility or their culpability in some issues, it's a tremendous legacy of apartheid. You can't leave tens of millions of people unskilled, oppressed, but above all unskilled, with a surging crime wave under apartheid, mostly black on black, by the way. Soweto was the capital, the murder capital of the world under apartheid. Now some of it directed at whites, that crime. It's a legacy of the one of the most unequal societies in the world, and a society that deliberately left the vast majority of its people, the black population, the indigenous population, without skills. As a deliberate instrument of policy, they were not allowed to get the skills that they needed. So they got that massive legacy. There is also, I think, there's too much corruption. There was in the old white system of a different kind. There's not enough focus on delivery. That's a problem that is true of all governments, but they've got a particular problem there of not sufficient delivery of really policies that are admirable on education and health and business support and so on, that don't somehow reach the ground. I'm disappointed too in some of their foreign policy stances. I mean, they have blocked action against Burma, the Burmese junta in the United Nations. They have also shown a tremendously ambivalent, to put it politely, attitude towards the Iranian regime. And I think they had a very, very ambivalent attitude towards Gaddafi, to put it at its best. Gaddafi supported the anti-apartheid struggle. For that he deserves enormous credit, and has been given it by Nelson Mandela and others. But the truth is, Gaddafi was an oppressive dictator, and his people eventually overthrew him. And I would like to see, also in respect to Mugabe's Zimbabwe, the same spirit of democracy and human rights and freedom struggle that inspired the anti-apartheid movement. And Mandela, with Mandela at its head, I'd like to see a consistency applied to other oppressive situations, whether they are Zimbabwe or Burma, for example. Well, I'm still privileged to be Neath's MP. I regard that as one of the greatest privileges that I've enjoyed as an individual. I'm very lucky in that respect. And I'll continue to be Neath's MP so long as the people want me, and so long as there's a constituency to represent, because the situation of the new boundaries is up in the air, and where all that will leave me and where it'll leave Neath. One proposal has been to just cut it in half, and to sever valleys like this, which have traditionally been part of Neath Town, from Neath Town. Well, we'll have to see where that ends up. And I'm very enthusiastic about supporting Ed Miliband as a leader I worked for, and identify with his values very much of social justice and greater equality and a commitment to democracy and individual liberties, which have inspired me all my political life. And I'm also, I suppose, much more now finding myself encouraging younger members of parliament, younger politicians, encouraging them to come in and supporting them. rather than striving myself to necessarily do everything that I was able to do in the past. But politics, as I've found over my life, is a very unpredictable game, if that's the right description. Calling, I think, is a better description for me. It's a very unpredictable calling. You never know what's going to happen, and I don't know where politics where I will end up politically. It depends on what happens in the general election, what happens in the boundaries, what people in Wales want me to do, what people in Neath want me to do. I suppose I'm most proud in government of the Northern Ireland settlement, because those who know what happened in 2007 know that in large part it was due to the leadership of Tony Blair and Bertie Ahern as the two prime ministers of Britain and Ireland, but also that what I did in that 2 years made a real difference in forcing and prompting and cajoling the leaders of unionism and the leaders of republicanism, Ian Paisley, Martin McGuinness, Gerry Adams, to come together as they did. And I think most people say that probably wouldn't have happened in that time frame were it not for the contribution I made. So that's for historians to judge, but I feel most proud of that. I'm very proud of having helped lead the 1997 referendum in Wales and the 2006 Act, which delivered the full lawmaking powers to the Welsh Assembly that I've always believed in. And I suppose going further back than that, the single most thing I'm proud of is stopping the 1970 all-white South African cricket tour, because it was that direct action, the non-violent direct action that I conceived of and led in disrupting the white Springbok campaign, Springbok tour before it, that forced the cancellation of the cricket tour, that struck an absolutely decisive blow against apartheid at that time. It led to white South Africa's sporting isolation, and it was, as Nelson Mandela and others told me after they came out of prison, it was a decisive turning point in the anti-apartheid struggle, which at that point was in a very bad state, with all the leaders locked up in Robben Island and elsewhere, the resistance crushed. And to have achieved that internationally, I'm very proud of that. And those I would say are the things I'm most proud of.